And I'll turn it over to our presenter for today, Alyssa Malaspina.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alyssa Malaspina. I'm a school librarian in New Jersey. I teach in Union, New Jersey, and live in South Orange, New Jersey, so northern New Jersey, not too far from New York City. And today I'm going to sort of talk to you about the idea of crafting effective policies. And I can do this because I have a unique perspective. I'm a school librarian and I'm also a school board member. So I've written the policies that help to fight against these book challenges. So I'm going to share my screen and get started. If anyone has any questions, feel free to interrupt me. We're going to basically, what we're going to do in this webinar is sort of go through the policies, and we're going to look at them almost sort of word for word. I'm going to highlight some of the things that I think are important that you do. So if you have questions, raise your hand, put them in the chat. I am really okay with you interrupting me because I want to make sure you get your questions answered as soon as possible. So I'm going to share my screen and let's start to go a little. So, let me see here. So this is called United Against Book Challenges, Crafting Effective Policies. A little about me. You can find me at alyssamalaspina.com and also at Alyssa Malaspina on most social networks. I'm a 23-year school librarian, and I'm the current SOMSD School Board Vice President. I have to say this, it's like the person who has to say like 4 out of 5 dentists. I get to say the views are my own and not those of the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education. If not, I get in trouble. So I'm the only school board who is a school librarian who's also on a school board in the state of New Jersey, and one of only a small amount in the United States. So this gives me this unique perspective on what we're looking at. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to put the link here to this URL. Let me see, copy link address. I'm going to put it into the chat for you guys. Wherever my chat went. I don't know where it went. It's somewhere there on the thing, but hopefully somebody can put this into the chat for you, because this link to the book planning wakelet is sort of what we are going to be looking at today and using. But I want to go over a few little things first with you. In New Jersey, we have some really good laws. And when you're looking at making your policies, it's important that you reference the laws that your state must follow. And I bet you guys have some laws that are going to be sort of like we have in New Jersey. So in New Jersey, school boards must follow the following laws. We have a Holocaust education that we must teach. We have an Amistad Commission bill that became a curriculum that is for for Black and African American history that we must follow. We have an LGBTQ plus law that we have to do. We have an diversity and inclusion curriculum. We have an Asian American history bill and an AAPI curriculum that we must follow. We have social emotional learning competencies, which I bet you your district, your New York has too. We have managing equity in education. We have the First Amendment, which everybody must follow. And in the state of New Jersey, we have right at this present moment, we have a joint statement from the Division of Civil Rights talking about banning and censoring books and how it is not appropriate. So we have all these laws that as a school board, we must follow. And that is important because a lot of times people don't think about those when they're crafting their policies. Putting those in there is going to help you because the people are going to have to explain to me, how are these policies, these laws that I as a school board must follow, how do those books, those resources not meet those laws? And guess what? In the state of New Jersey, it's going to be really hard for them to tell me how that doesn't meet those laws, because it about hits all the things that we tend to challenge. But the SOMSD policies and the policies we're going to go over, and I'll talk more about them, but I want you to sort of see some of the highlights of them. There are certain things that I put into these policies for a reason. And the first one is I limit who can challenge a book. And you do that because what is happening now is we are starting to see Mothers of Liberty and other organizations come in, and what they are doing is they are putting in, like, they're just coming into districts. They might not even have anybody in the like from the district, or have no person that's like kid or parent or guardian or that lives in the district, and just start challenging books. Well, guess what? We limited who could challenge a book, so it's only a student in the district or a parent / guardian of a student in the district who can challenge a book. And we did that because those are the people with a vested interest in the district. You want to make it so that it's only those people. I don't want any random outsiders who have no knowledge, don't even have kids in our school, challenging books in our school. That makes absolutely no sense. So we made it so it's only the people that can, to try to combat some of the stuff we're seeing, which is that they are starting to do these types of things where they're coming in and asking for it. They must prove, how does it meet the state curriculums? As you saw, we have a long list of bills and curriculums that we as a school district have to teach. So how do you make it hard to prove that? List those curriculums out. Whenever you are doing it, it's important. List them out. You might not even realize what you already have as a state that can be helpful for you. And then another thing that we see that people tend to do is they will challenge, a whole like 800 books, and they want them all to be done at one time. No, each book gets a separate challenge. They each get a separate challenge, and they each have to go through the process separately. We don't want this masked banning of books where they're not getting their own process. Usually, when a school board writes policies, we tend to be vague in how we write policies. And you do that because you want leeway in things. You don't want it always spelled out, because if it's so spelled out, sometimes it can, it doesn't leave room for interpretation. And a lot of times when school districts are writing policies, they want a little room for interpretation. But in these policies and these regulations, you want it to be very detailed and spelled out, so there is no real room for interpretation. Because that is what these types of organizations like Mothers of Liberty want, is to leave that room for interpretation so that they can use that against you. No, you want a very detailed regulation process, and as much into the policy as possible, very detailed how it goes. And you want that for a few reasons. One, because you want it to spell out so there's no room for interpretation, but also because it helps the people who are going to have to deal with any challenges. When it's spelled out for them, it's like, okay, well, here's what I do. I do exactly this. Because what principals and other people tend to do is they'll just be like, oh, I don't know how to handle this. I'm just going to remove the book from the shelves and get it over with. No, when you have it detailed out, they have a script to follow, they have exactly how it's going to go, and they need to be following that. And it protects the school district, and it protects the process. You want to get students involved in this. These are their books. They're banning books that are going for the kids. So make sure that students are part of the challenge committees that set up. And we'll go through exactly what that looks like. But I have kids, it doesn't matter if they're elementary school, middle school, or high school, they are on the committees because it's a book that these kids should read. So a fifth grader could be on the committee because, for an elementary school, because they should be able to read the book that's there. A high schooler should be on the committee for a high school book. Make them part of the committee because they are the ones that are directly affected by this. Make it a very long form that they must fill out if they want to challenge a book. I have 29 questions that must be answered in great detail. And you do that because people don't want to do that. People don't want to do 29 questions. And also because what we're starting to see is that most school districts will just use the ALA suggested challenge form. And the Mothers of Liberty groups have started to just fill out the books with those challenge forms and just photocopy them and give it to people. So no, we want them to have a detailed one. You're going to have to really read this book. You're going to have to prove it. And they just can't use that quick and easy fix. It's also important that we spell out that no books can be removed during the process, that the books must remain on the shelves while challenges are going on, because that's something districts tend to do. And it's also important that it can't be removed in secret. So what we have seen school districts try to do is make it so that the meeting is held in a private meeting, or there's not really the public is involved in it. And they just have a committee and the committee decides and that's it. No, if the challenge reaches the board level, which would lead to a removal of a book, the meeting must be held in public and the public must have a chance to weigh in. We want it to be done in public because that way then everybody knows exactly why this is happening. And you also do that because it embarrasses the school board members and you have a better chance for the book people to change their minds when their neighbors and others are screaming at them versus if you did it in silent. So those are some of the highlights, and we're going to go through. We also in South Orange Maplewood recently passed a right to read resolution, which is another way to also, while we fix the policies, we are also sort of taking this right to read resolution and on top of that, throwing that in there and being like, hey, not only do we have policies that are saying that it's going to be hard to ban books, but we as a Board of Education believe in the right for students to read. And we believe that it's not okay to ban books. So anybody who thinks they might want to come in and try to challenge that, that's going to be really hard because we just unanimously passed a resolution saying that no, we believe in the effort to denounce all efforts to ban books. You can take this resolution. I'm gonna give you a copy of it. You can put it in your own school districts. Just switch out the names. It's all there written for you. And so we did something like that recently too, to just reaffirm the idea that we believe in having the right to read. So I'm going to get into now, we're going to go into these resources. This Wakelet is yours. It has everything you're going to need for this for you. And I talk a little bit more about the policies, but there's two main policies that you guys need to have an understanding of. One is in the state of New Jersey, it's called 2530 resource materials. Different states have different policy numbers. They might call it a little different things, but basically you're going to find that in every state, every school district has some policy that talks about what resources you put into your school. So, that could be books, that can be videos, that can be lots of different things. That could be curriculum, books for your curriculum, that could be textbooks, that could be library books. So those resource materials, that's an important policy for you to make sure is up to date, and that you're reaffirming the idea that we want diversity of materials in those books. The other one that is very important is 9130 for New Jersey, but every other state has something else, and it's basically called public complaints. So if a public person were to come and complain about something, what process do they use, and how does this make, how does it work? And so you need to clearly define how people make a challenge. And then there are regulations that sort of go with the policy. So the policy is more broad, it outlines it. The regulations are more in-depth and go into exactly how something like that happens. Usually in school districts, the Board of Ed writes the policies, and then the administration writes the regulations. In the case with the regulations, I worked with the administration on it. I gave them suggestions. They looked at it. They said, okay. And they said to me, Liz, you're the one who's the more knowledgeable on this topic. So we're trusting you to, help us with this. But really, it wasn't me doing it. It was more them doing that. And then there's also a request for reconsideration of materials form. So that's basically the challenge form that you have. And I have all these for you. So let's look at the first one, which is the resource material policy. This is the South Orange Board of Ed's one. This is the one we updated in 2021. I highly recommend that you look at yours and figure out when yours was updated, because I'm going to tell you there's a very good likelihood this has not been updated anytime soon, because the laws haven't changed. The First Amendment hasn't changed. There really has been no changes to what you can bring into your schools. Now, school districts usually only update policies if there has been a change to the law that means that you need to update it. You can proactively update it at any time, but most of these, nothing has changed. So most people aren't going to update them because they have a lot of other things to do on the Board of Ed, instead of just updating a policy that is like, it's fine, it should work. Except what we're starting to see now is Mothers of Liberty and groups like that are taking the idea that these haven't been changed and using it against the districts, because the districts have sort of made very broad policies. You'll see most of the other policies are very broad and left up for interpretation, and we don't want that anymore. And their Mothers of Liberty are using that to their advantage. So if you see here, I did a number of things. In the first paragraph, I sort of outline what materials we're talking about in resource materials. And I did that because we're also starting to see people try to challenge some electronic databases that people have, like Myon, books in Myon, books in Mac and Via, any electronic or audio books, okay? So outlining those, I thought was important, so that we are really making it clear to people that we're talking about print and non-print materials and electronic books, electronic databases, and, stuff that's not a textbook. But I also snuck in here, as you see here, the selection of resource materials involves many people, including a certified library media specialist. I did that on purpose, because if you try to cut the librarians, or you try to put in people who aren't certified as librarians, then you are breaking those policies where you're saying that a certified librarian needs to be part of this. So sneak in the term certified librarian, because we've seen throughout the year, many districts move to having paras or other people take over the job that used to be librarians. So I purposely snuck the word certified library media specialist in. Nobody said anything about it. And most people didn't even realize the real reason why I did that, which was to add some job security to the librarians if perchance later on they try to remove the librarians. I talk about sort of, how that works. But the most important part here is some of these guidelines. We talk about the various backgrounds, interests, reading levels, maturity levels. And we will provide maximum accessibility to these materials. Well, whenever possible, I wrote whenever possible, because there is sometimes when, we should have, major opposing views on controversial issues, but there is no amazing and controversial view that is okay on, say, the Holocaust or something like that, where you're starting to see them trying to do that. So that whenever possible, it's put in to sort of stop those people who are trying to say stuff like that. This is a very important one. Materials will represent the many religious, ethnic, and cultural groups, as well as persons of a diversity of gender identity, and sexual orientations, and their contributions to the world, thereby enabling students to develop diverse intellectual integrity. That is purposely in there so that we are saying that what we are seeing getting banned are, what are we getting banned? We're getting like, there's certain things we're seeing that are always the ones banned. So by putting something in there that's saying, we want our materials to have representation that has religious, ethnic, cultural groups, as well as persons of diverse gender identity, sexual orientation, all of that, it makes it so it's harder for those to be banned. Let's see what else is in here. Provide the school library media specialists would qualified for, to serve the interests. You see, I also put in here that the school library / media will provide qualified personnel, including certified library media specialists, to serve the teachers and students. Threw that in there as a way to save the librarians too. You got to get smart, and you throw little things in that you don't think people will they don't really realize that they're in there, but they're done for a reason. It says, let's see. I made it very clear. I wrote, ensure inventory of research materials is well-balanced, diverse, well-rounded coverage. That's important. I also put in, because I believe very much in this, but our district does too, that we are free of any and all late fees and fines, other than the replacement of costs of books. I think that is something important to put in. We talk a little about weeding and where you get the information. This last paragraph is important. The South Orange Maplewood School District supports the principles of intellectual freedom inherent to the First Amendment of the Constitution and expressed in the Library Bill of Rights of the American Library Association and the Students' Right to Read of the National Council of Teachers of English. In the event that materials are questioned, the principles of intellectual freedom the right to access materials, and the integrity of the certified library media personnel must be defended. I put that part in, especially the integrity of the certified library media personnel, because of a conversation I had with Martha Hickson. I don't know how many of you guys know Martha Hickson, but she was called a pornographer by many people for having LGBTQ plus books in her library. And the school board did nothing to defend her. They never apologized for not defending her. They allowed, even though it was slanderous, they allowed that to occur. So what we are saying is, if you start attacking the librarian, and we're seeing people start to attack the librarians, we have another librarian in the state of New Jersey who is suing for slander the people who have started to attack them, that the school district needs to stand up and say, this is not appropriate for you to say this about our personnel. And having something like that in there, I really believe is important, because how are you going to say you are not, like, if you as a school district decide to ban a book, tell me, how does that book not meet the First Amendment, the Library Bill of Rights, students' right to read, intellectual freedom? It's going to be really hard for them to justify it. And that is all done on purpose. So make sure when you are making a policy, it is really important to put some of those types of language in here that I have. Now I'm going to show you the next policy, which is, okay, this is the material policy. This is what we are saying we want in our libraries, in our schools, in our databases. We have these. This is how we have set it up. Well, if somebody comes and challenges, this is the policy they're going to have to follow if they want to challenge a book. So that one comes to the 9130, the public complaints policy. And this is sort of how you handle the public complaints. We took this one and we broke this up into two parts, because sometimes parents and guardians might have a problem with a teacher or an educational program, stuff like that. There's a certain way you deal with that. But we went down and we have a whole section that says public complaints and grievances related to instructional and resource materials. So that would be the books in the library. So we talk a little about, they're curated by educational professionals. There may be a time when a student or a parent / guardian of a student in the district may want to reconsider the inclusion of a particular matter in the collection. Any student or parent or a guardian of a student that has a legitimate interest in this school district may present a complaint regarding that. So that doesn't include a person that doesn't have any kids in the district, that even may live in town. That doesn't include anybody else that can randomly come in. We're talking about only students or parents / guardians of students in the district can challenge books. We don't even put teachers in there. We're basically just saying, you're a student. If a teacher wants to, they can just have to deal with the fact that it's not there. Now, some people may want to include teachers in there. I am realizing this now after the 100th time of talking about this. We don't have teachers listed in there, and maybe if I were to go back, I might now put it in, but I think I'm feeling confident with what I have. This is important. You usually see this, but when a board member is confronted with an issue, the board member will withhold comment. That is important that they make it clear to people, because sometimes we're seeing board members being the ones who are challenging the books or are siding with people on these book challenges. They need to be quiet. And if they're not, then they can be brought up for ethics charges for not following the policies. It's always good to say, do it, if misunderstandings, disputes, whenever possible, we try to settle it direct with informal discussions among the interested parties. We don't really want to get formal. If we can just say, have you, the person, come talk to the librarian and be like, hey, I don't really like that book, and you as the librarian go to the person, okay, I get you don't want your son Johnny to read that book, and that's fine. Johnny doesn't have to read that book. I have many other books Johnny can read, or we can put that on a list that Johnny can't read, but it becomes a problem when it's not everybody can read that book. So we need to start to, as much as possible, say, hey, you don't want your child reading that book? I have no problem with that. But I am not okay when you start to make it so that not every child can read that book. So we talk about how the formal procedures go. And it talks about a little here about the instructional resources materials should be addressed to the building principal after first having an informal discussion with the school librarian or teacher about the material in question. So we want them to go to that teacher or librarian first, and then to the principal. And then the superintendent shall establish procedures for the hearings. But here's where it talks about the student or parent and guardian of a district student in the school district shall use the following procedures to present evidence that material does not meet the criteria of that resource material policy I just showed you, and any applicable, and I always say that wrong, state requirements by requesting reconsidered of the challenged materials. So I say examples of the state, but not limited to, and I write the Holocaust bill. All of those types of things that we're seeing. Tell me how all boys are blue doesn't meet our LGBTQ plus curriculum that we have to teach. You're not going to be able to tell me that. You can't. We need to teach history and LGBTQ rights to our students in the state of New Jersey. So how is that book? It fits in with our curriculum that we as a school district must teach. We talk about how challenged materials shall remain in use and shall not be removed until the following informal and formal due process procedures have been fully completed. We talk about how no challenged material may be removed solely because it presents ideas that may be unpopular or offensive to some. That is important also. No challenge material may be removed from the curriculum or from a collection of resource materials except by action of the Board of Education after a public hearing. Any board action to remove materials will be accompanied by a board statement of its reasons for removal. So not only am I saying that the board needs to have a hearing, because we have hearings all the time as the Board of Ed for different things, where we meet, for HIB hearings and lots of other things. And we might not put a statement out otherwise. We just either vote yes or no and not really talk about it. No, I'm making that Board of Ed say exactly why you remove that book and put it in writing. And why do we do that? Because when you put something in writing, it's easier to challenge. And if a board chooses to remove a book, it's very likely it's against the law. And so I want that in writing. If more than one item is being challenged, each item challenged will be read and reviewed for consideration individually. That's important. I want also the Board of Education to keep an updated list of all challenged and banned materials on the district website, because I want to basically embarrass them. If they're going to challenge something, we're going to list it and tell you why we challenged it and why it got banned, and embarrass the people who did that. And we have a link always available to parents if they want to request the materials and regulations. The request for material reconsideration form, which is the one you use to challenge a book. So let's look at the regulations. I'm going to look at the regulations here. So this is very detailed. I give it to you. I'm not going to go over it all, but you're going to see that there's multiple steps, and there's multiple steps for a reason, which is we want to make it very detailed so people understand exactly what happens and how it works. First step, we try to do it informally. Teacher, student, you go to the teacher, the school librarian, you have a talk with them, you talk about it, hopefully it resolves on its own. Doesn't get to step 2, which is the school administrator, the principal. If it does, okay, they have to, has an objection, they must fill everything out, they must, first request in writing a conference with the principal. The principal has to schedule the conference within 10 days. So we're putting timelines on these things because what we have seen happen is school districts have tried to keep these things from happening by putting long times. It's taken months and months and months for a book to be challenged and left off the shelves. No, everything has a date. Everything has a time when they must be done. So they have to fill out the material form. And then then they have a conference with the principal. And basically the principal says, hey, I read your stuff, but I'm sorry, we're not going to, we're gonna, keep the book. And then if the parent doesn't like that, then they can have a school material review committee. So then that's when it would go to a school material review committee. And I list the people who are on this committee. You have a school media specialist. You have the principal or a designee. You have at least one teacher. If it's a teacher, if it involved a teacher, then you wouldn't have that teacher in. You'd have one parent/legal guardian. You want somebody that's going to be, somebody that's going to be on your side on this. And then we have a student member of the student council. So usually the student council is made up of the 5th graders or something like that. So we want somebody that is a member of the student body to be a part of this. So then they meet, and then we have a whole part here on exactly what they do. Each member shall receive a copy of the material form and any other information that they need. They will review the challenge materials within 15 working days of receipt of the material form. We have to have a quorum of members present. It can't be 2 members of the group present and they're making the decisions. No, a quorum of members must be present when they hear this. And these are what they're going to review when they're looking at it. Review the challenge material, have an understanding of the entire work. Survey the evaluation of the documents, determine the extent supports the curriculum, weighs the merits of it, and then they issue a recommendation. Hopefully they're going to say, sorry, these books are good. They're part of our resource policies. It goes under our resource policies. It goes under everything else. They're fine. We're keeping the book, and that's it, which they would hopefully do. And then, the principal sends a letter to the superintendent and board saying, we've looked it over. We think the book's good. Now, the person has the right to continue the challenge if they want. If they don't get what they want, they can go to a district level. So then we have a district level review committee. And in that, we have dates and timelines, okay, on how that occurs. But we basically are saying that in the district level, you have a team leader of school librarians, or, like anyone or another librarian who is, in charge. You have an assistant superintendent of curriculum and learning. If you have, in our school district, we have an access and equity superintendent. So we want him on that committee. We have a school administrator, not from the original school. We have a parent. We have a grade level subject teacher. We have another teacher, and we have our student representative to the Board of Ed on this committee. And then it goes through exactly what they're going to do, what they're going to look at. Hopefully they will say no. If they don't say no, they say no, it reaches their level. Whoever person wants to go to a step 5, then we're going to go to a step 5, which means then the Board of Ed takes all of the information that these committees, the school level committee, the district level committee is looked at. They look at all of that. Then the Board of Ed ultimately is the one who makes the decision. And they've read all the stuff, they've determined it, and then they've had a public hearing about it, and then they make an outcome. Now, if a challenged resource is retained, and this is an important one to put in, then the district will not convene a reconsideration committee related to the same material for a period of 5 years. So that means every year you can't go back and challenge the same book over again. If we looked at All Boys Are Blue once, then we're not looking at that book again for 5 years. And then if the material's removed after 2 years, the district review committee will reconvene and reevaluate the material in question. So the hope is that in 2 years, a new board comes on and that they would change this and hopefully fix it. But putting that information in is sort of important to those timelines. So these are all the regulations. Now, where did I get most of these regulations from? Because they're very detailed. Ironically, I got most of them from Florida. Now, this was before Florida went nuts, and Broward County in Florida had dealt with a few book challenges a while ago. They realized their regulations and their committees and how they dealt with book challenges wasn't that good. So they created this really good system. Very detailed. I went and I took most of it. Then comes the state law, changes everything, and now everything's gone, but from their website and all of that. But they really have a good process in here. So I took most of it and used it in ours. And I highly recommend it. Now, I also have made a request for reconsideration form. So I explain, these are some of the questions they ask. And the instructions on exactly how to use it. The form asks you to frame your response in the context of the following policies, okay? And I list all the policies. And then I have questions like, describe why you believe the informal meeting with the teacher or school librarian did not address your concerns. Publisher, explain the purpose or theme of the material as you understand it. What worthwhile qualities does this material contain? What are your concerns about the material? Please cite page numbers or locations or quote specific passages that you might be concerned about. How has the material been assessed by professional reviewers? Okay, and you need to provide those reviews. Provide a text of a review and a citation from an objective professional review source that supports your objection to the material. Guess what? It's going to be hard to find those. Does the material, in what ways does it fail to comply with that policy 2350? Please explain to me. It's going to be hard to figure that out. In what days does it fail to comply with all of these things here? Please check which ones and provide specific examples of how you don't think that happens. How does it not fail to do the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, the right to read, the US Constitution? How do you believe students would be affected by the material? What evidence do you have to evidence of that belief that students are going to be affected? Okay, please provide the research that shows how you believe that students are going to be affected by the material that you say. What other, in place of the book, what other things do you, I guess, recommend instead? Do you believe you should be permitted to restrict the reading choices of children other than your own? Why do you believe this? Explain to me why. And what actions do you want the district to consider? You got to fill that out for every book, and you're going to have to explain all of that. And I'm going to do that because that is going to make it really long and really hard and really annoying for you to be able to explain that. And my hope is that most people will stop. So I have included all of this information for you in this wakelet that you guys will get a copy of. Take it. Use these. I have written these so others can use it. My school district. So I am on the school board for South Orange Maplewood. I teach in Union, which is one town over. The school district of Union took my policies and my regulations and are now using them. It makes me feel really good because I know exactly if a book gets challenged, I know I'm going to be protected in this process. But lots of school districts are starting to take parts of it or the whole present or all of the wording and using it as their own. Don't be afraid to do that. It is okay. We do that all the time. We steal wording from others because no one wants to write all these policies themselves. So take it and use it. Give it to your board, give it to your administrators. And what's great is administrators like it when they have another policy that somebody else has already passed, because then it's good. It's been vetted by legal. Somebody's done it. They don't have to worry about it. So they're more likely to put it in place when they know there's other districts who have done it. So use all of this stuff. It is here to have it for you. I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes answering any questions, if not longer, and I'm here to help you. That's basically what I have for you. I know I talked a lot, but I wanted you guys to really understand and get a reasoning why I put certain things where I did.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or since it's a smaller group today, I think it'd be fine to just turn off your microphone and ask that way if that's easier.
I think, Claire, I like your comment. What gives you the right? Yeah, please explain to me, why do you feel that way? I want to know, why do you feel that way? You're going to have to explain to me why you believe we shouldn't do those things.
I did have one question about your school review committee. How do you determine who is going to serve on that committee or how long they're able to participate? I'm thinking particularly the parent representative.
I would say that the parent representative is probably chosen by the principal or the district or somebody like that. It depends on the level. And it would only I would say that the parent is asked when after at the time of the if it we get to the point where we need it. Um, I wouldn't I don't feel like this is a standing committee that really meets that often, only if you have a request. And what I'm going to tell you is I leave it up to the administration to make that decision. You know, we want to keep these books in play, so you're going to try to find a parent that you know is going to be sort of in your you know, it feels the same way you do on these issues. So find that parent, and most administrators will know that parent who supports public education, who supports the right to read, stuff like that. We sort of all have that person.
Okay. So this isn't a committee that's established ahead of time.
Well, I
It's
mean, what Union did, and I know that the district where I am, yeah, look for the spouse of the librarians. I mean, that's a good one. Hey, or look for the librarian. I mean, who like I'm about to leave the school board, okay, in my town. I would be the perfect person to put on if for some reason after we leave, we have it. I could run the whole thing. I wrote the policy. But look for those librarians that might live in your town. Why not put a public librarian in there? Okay, if they're one of the public librarians has a kid in the district, why not put the head of the PTA? There's people that everybody knows that could do that. So okay, we have a Holocaust education law, but it was passed. Well, yeah, they have a Holocaust education law, but it was passed in 2022. That's fine. Then use that in your stuff. I mean, so you're saying that, in that Holocaust education law, it probably talks about diversity of viewpoints. I don't exactly know what your law says, but it's going to have some stuff about being inclusive in religion and other things. Was there a case in which someone challenging was successful or close? No, I have not had that yet. And I use yet because I really sort of believe, sadly, that it's becoming not a if, but a when is it going to happen. So that's why I really believe making our policies as strong as possible are so important, because that's what you're going to fall back on when a challenge hits you. And if you have a poor policy or one that is very broad, it's much easier for a challenge to happen. When you have one that is more detailed and have the regulations like I showed you, it makes it harder for them to succeed. I haven't had one yet, but that doesn't mean that in the state of New Jersey, there have been some that have passed, but none of them have had these policies in place yet when they have it. Now, what in the state of New Jersey we're trying to have happen during this lame duck session is in New Jersey, we have senators who have proposed a right to read bill that would make it illegal to ban books, which would then take the emphasis off of the school districts, and it would just be a state law, and that would be even better. But until that point, you have to rely on the individual school districts, and that's why it's important to update your policies. Yeah, you might not in New York have as many laws to discuss inclusivity as in New York. New Jersey, we're lucky. New Jersey is has been very inclusive and in their stuff, but I would do more research on that, because there might be some in some of these laws that you don't even realize that there's curriculums that you might offer. And that could be something that your state, like in New Jersey, we have NJSL, the New Jersey Association of School Librarians. And they're the ones who put together a list of the laws that would help with book bans. In New York, there might be a list from your school library association or your New York Library Association a list of laws somewhere that would help with book bans. Like if a book was to get banned or challenged, here's some laws that help support it not happening. We have that in the state of New Jersey. And I think I might have even included it in my, in the, oh yeah, in the wakelet, and I'm not going to share my screen again. It says laws to assist with the censorship challenges. So these are the learning standards, and this was put together by the New Jersey Association of School Librarians, who has put together some of these lists so that if it were to happen, these laws are here to help you. So I might suggest, you guys as an organization, or you guys, or your school library association might actually have something, but if they don't, it might be worth putting together, because if a challenge were to happen, having something like that readily available is going to be important. Are there any other questions? I am here to help you guys. Like, I am the weirdo who, when I got put on the policy committee my first year on the board, I was like, policy committee? I don't want to be a policy committee. This sucks. I actually really enjoy it. It's, you really, as a school board, one of your main jobs is to make policies. So it's so important that you have people on these and who are writing policies that do things in the right way to protect the students, to protect the teachers, protect everybody. And people don't think about about the book challenges that are happening, how important it is to have the good policies in place, make it harder for a challenge to happen. Because every time that I have seen a challenge that it's occurred and I go back and look at the policy, I'm like, that's because their policy sort of was weak and there was a lot left to interpretation, and that's why that was allowed to happen. Because remember, when you also have a policy and you don't follow that policy, then you as a private citizen or others can sue the school district because they didn't follow their policies. So it's important also to have it in writing so that in case they chose not to, you have the ability to sue them and force them to change it, to make those changes. So it's another reason why focusing on the policy is important. I know we are almost at the end of our time. You can email me. My email, I'll put it in the chat for you. It's emailaspina@gmail.com. And I am available to help whatever way I can.
Thank you, Alyssa. Yeah, I think it would be really interesting to find a list of laws in New York State that can support these district or school policies. And if anyone comes across one, please send
I'd
it
love
our
it.
way.
Please let me know, because I'll put it in this wakelet for others too, because I'd love to collect them because I talk at other places. I just happen to know New Jersey's because that's where most of mine's focused on. But honestly, a collection like that is important, because each state has different laws and curriculums. People forget that a lot of times you're forced to, you have to teach certain mandated topics, and they forget that, and they'll challenge things, and you can be like, hey, I get it, you might want to challenge that book, but that book goes along with my LGBTQ, or that goes with my Amistad curriculum, or that goes with my diversity and inclusion curriculum, or my indigenous history curriculum. Like, so tell me, how does that not fit what I by law have to teach my students? So they forget that a lot of times. And so I think listing that and making those, priority is important to remind people. And I'm here to help. Is
Well,
there any other
thank you so
questions before
much.
we leave? Thank you guys for being here today. And, I love talking on this subject, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I'll send out a link to the recording from today's session to everyone who attended and another link to the Wakelet. So you'll have access to all of those excellent resources. Thank you so much to everyone who attended, and if we're all set here, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.